Hey everybody, what's up? I'm supposedly live. It's always fun to go live on StreamYard separately from Rockfin, but it's not showing up quite yet on Rockfin.
I think we're live. I don't know.
I never know. It's like really frustrating. Can
We're in the
anyone tell
the
me in the chat
void,
if
the
we're live?
the live stream void.
There's no live function. Here we go. We are live. All right, good. Yeah, so here we are. And this is Foreign Agents number 5. And I got my good friend and podcast partner in crime, Ben Norton, here with me. We have a really video intensive discussion lined up about some of the most effective and deceptive mechanisms for cultivating support for regime change wars and child starving sanctions in the US. And it's vulnerable seeming defectors and dissidents. And one in particular who is been getting a lot of screen time on some of the most popular podcasts in the world, Yeonmi Park. But you know, whenever there's a country that where the US wants to topple the government, you are suddenly going to have your news coverage of that country flooded with defectors, dissidents, and they tend to be people who you want to rescue. That's the sort of the CNN effect. It's the essence of the R2P responsibility to protect humanitarian interventionist narrative. And the most famous defector today is Yeonmi Park. Ben, I don't know if you have any thoughts before we jump into, what Yeonmi's been up to, just about the general phenomenon of defectors and dissidents.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's one of the most effective and also just cynical tactics that these, so-called policymakers in Washington always use. I hate that term, policymaker. The imperial planners, right? They always point to these people and use them as kind of props. And we've seen this so many times. In fact, it didn't get a lot of attention, but there was a very similar case. I'll find a photo during the Trump years. This must have been 2019 or 2020, where that group, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, organized this photo op with a bunch of defectors and so-called victims of all these different countries. And they had like someone from North Korea, from Cambodia, from Vietnam, and from Venezuela, and from Cuba. And the guy from Venezuela was like this white dude, this like white teenager who was like lighter skinned than me and spoke English with a totally fluent American accent and was like in this expensive suit. And you just see how cynical and absurd this is. And he was like, I am a victim of the Maduro regime and all this stuff. I mean, that's the most absurd case. But I think for a lot of people, this actually does have a big impact, because how many North Koreans do you know? How many even Vietnamese, unless you live in like a big city like New York, if you're in flyover country in most of the United States, you probably don't know any people from Vietnam, and definitely not North Korea, and probably not Venezuela either. So they trot out these people on TV who always speak English, who are always trained, as we can talk about today. There are PR firms. In the case of Iraq, we'll talk about one of the most infamous cases of Naira. We know that there were many PR firms who trained her, and I'm sure there are many of these other defectors are trained, and they know what are like the sensitive points, right? To hit those points, like the ones that will make people cry or make people that will tug at their heartstrings. It's so cynical.
Yeah, the Naira episode, which we'll get into later, really exposed how the defectors are coached, trained, cultivated, and essentially told to lie, because the whole scheme was exposed before the US public. It was exposed in alternative media, and then it made its way to the New York Times. And basically, the Kuwaiti government had hired 16 PR firms, some of whom were coaching her, but to promote a US war on Iraq. But let's talk about Yeonmi Park. I mean, Yeonmi Park has been around for a while. She got some prominence during the Trump brokered summit between Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in, which was very popular in Korea, but not very popular among US media. That's basically stenographers for the Pentagon and State Department. So Yeonmi Park's story kind of came out in the New York Times, but her story has changed so many times over the year. It's obvious she's basically just making shit up or embellishing very hard. There are powerful right-wing libertarian networks behind her that are paying her way around the country. She's married to a famous hedge funder, but she just showed up on Joe Rogan, and this kind of has taken her to another level, I think.
I just noticed that TED actually, they even have translations. The Spanish one automatically came up because I'm in Latin America, but it shows how much energy and effort and resources are put into this. That they translated her TED talk into 27 languages.
Yeah, I was looking for other defectors on YouTube who have made up stories, and she was basically like data mined into my feed, and I didn't know she was on Joe Rogan. It just kept getting pushed into my feed on YouTube, so I watched some of it, and it's pretty remarkable.
They have her TED talk here in Kurdish, in Farsi, in Arabic, in Hungarian, in Polish, in 2 different kinds of Portuguese, in Chinese, in Japanese. I mean, in Russian. Like, this is in Greek. Like, they're trying to get people in Greece to watch this shit.
Seems like someone has a real serious interest in demonizing North Korea. They're trying to spread the message. But let's just introduce people to the Joe Rogan show, because I mean, these are some wild claims that should have raised alarm bells. But North Korea has been so thoroughly demonized that it seems believable to a lot of people. And she's basically talking about like people eating rats, and then the rats eating the people, and then the people eating the people. I mean, it's sort of endless.
You want me to play the clip?
Yeah, go ahead.
Eyeballs of the people who are dying, and children who are starving would eat the rats, and then the children would die. To try to explain it to people.
Rogan experience.
When you were talking about going to the doctor when you were a child,
I love that he's got a Tesla shirt on.
Oh God,
this is
one of the biggest Ponzi
schemes
in modern history.
But I want you to try to explain it to people, how people were dying in these hospitals, and rats would eat the eyeballs of the people who are dying, and children who are starving would eat the rats, and then the children would die and the rats would eat the children.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Explain what this was like. That you how did you see this?
Well, I mean, seeing that the bodies on the streets like everyday thing. It was
Where were the bodies? Like just laying around on the streets?
So they are floating in the rivers.
Oh my God.
They also train stations somehow had a lot of dead bodies.
Oh my God! I just had to stop it there.
You hate to laugh at people talking about death, but it's just so fake.
We're supposed to believe there are dead bodies just hanging out on the streets and in rivers, like in. Oh my God, that is so absurd. All right, I'll continue.
It's because North Korea is very cold, and there's a train waiting area, and North Korea has one train go to one distance like once a month, and like here it would take like 1 hour to go the other place. In North, it take a month at least to go.
Oh my God. Honestly, look, I'm not pretending like North Korea is a paradise, but I guarantee you the trains are faster and better run and more effective in North Korea than anywhere in the US.
Well, people just ride around there on boats on dead bodies. They float on dead bodies down the river because the train doesn't
They make rafts. They take rope and just wrap up all the dead bodies as rafts.
Yeah, and just they paddle with like babies being eaten by rats. Okay,
I don't know if she's confusing it with a Takashi Miike film, or if she really thinks we expect this to be real, but I'll keep going.
Because there's no electricity, and sometimes people have to push the train.
There's no electricity, so people. Why wouldn't they just?
Why
walk?
would you push the train? Like, just get out and walk, or ride a bicycle. Like they have bicycles. Like, push the train. Great. Like, we can't get to work unless we push. How are you going to push a train through a tunnel anyway?
This is the most fake shit. All right.
They have to push the train.
Yeah. Yeah, traveling in North Korea is an unbelievably difficult thing within North Korea. So, I mean, anyway, so in train stations, that's when people die mostly. And in North Korea, the hardest thing as a child for me is that when my mom goes away to find food, we don't have we don't have phones, we don't have letters. If I say goodbye to her, I don't know when I'm gonna see her again, or if I'm ever gonna see her again.
There's
There's
no
Okay,
phones in
wait.
North Korea.
There's no phones and there's no letters. Apparently,
People,
paper is prohibited. You can't write a letter to anyone.
you
Totally
can't.
absurd.
You could. Couldn't you write a letter and then put it on the train and then push the train back to your mom to tell her?
Yeah. Oh, that's why they have to push the train, because they're full of letters. Because
Yeah.
there's no phones, and they have to go take all the letters to burn them in a giant fire.
There's the only phones they have are like connected on strings from styrofoam cups.
Yeah, they're just like tin cans. After you eat the beans, you have to reuse them. I mean, I'm not one of these people who's like really anti Joe Rogan. Like, I don't think he's like the worst guy ever. I don't think he's also like a really great guy. I think he's got like, he does good interviews and he does bad interviews, but he has good people on sometimes, like Abby Martin. He's done other stuff.
Well,
But
yeah, I agree.
the idea that like he's like some far right fascist is really dumb. I mean, he endorsed Bernie, but at the same time, like does he really believe this? Like, he doesn't push back at all. It's just like, are you really that dumb, man? Like, how could you
well,
not
the
be
reason that
curious when she's
people-
saying this shit?
I think the reason that people like him is he doesn't push back on guests and he has compelling people on who just say whatever. They'll talk about aliens or anything. And people are sick of the culture of like the host jumping down the guest's throat if they say something out of the mainstream. But here you have
like
someone
Mehdi
who's
Hassan, where every interview is just an enhanced interrogation.
exactly. And no one can like grill him on his own awful politics. But here you have someone who has a clear ulterior agenda, who's backed by powerful right-wing interests, and she's just I mean, how can you believe this unless you really know nothing about the world? But obviously a lot of people do. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
She could have killed and like raped and starved. You just never know how to find people. So in the in the morning when you go like walk in the train station, they just put the piles of the dead bodies, and they're all like become rigid, right? They're almost like wood piled on them, and
It's also so crazy because I mean, there are people, not that many, but there are foreigners who go visit North Korea, and there's photos and videos and all this stuff. And people will say, "Oh, well, the government controls it," but there's so many videos and photos of the train system, of the metros. This idea that there's just like, she's not even just saying that there's a few. She's saying that there's every morning there's mountains of just dead bodies. Like, you wouldn't be able to hide that.
Yeah. Well, at some point she gets to people eating the bodies.
Yeah, all right, here we go.
walking away. And but the thing is, for me, I didn't even know the word compassion. Like, nobody told me you have to feel bad for it, because for me it's like fish in the water don't notice the water, right? Like that was like
Right.
something every day I saw as a child.
So you never went days where you didn't see. This is a normal thing to see dead bodies.
It was like every day as like normal as like breathing the air right now. And one thing that I still
Did she
remember
grow up in
is-
Afghanistan under U.S.
sister,
military
my
occupation?
sister and I was walking by the well. Like in North Korea, we don't have a switch. We don't have running water. Obviously.
Here comes a good one.
Oh my God. She said, obviously, there's no sewage and there's no running, water. Oh my God. Who believes this?
To go to well or river to bring the drinking water. And there's a young teenage boy, I think, lying down, and his intestines coming out of his back. When you're really malnourished, that thing all opens up. You got zero fats.
When, if you're malnourished, your organs just pop out. Like, your skin is just like, it's just like paper. It's like
Yeah,
cotton
your
candy.
intestines just fall out, like in Vietnam when the soldiers would get hit by like a fragmentation round. They just like fall out, and then people have to be shot up with morphine as they walk down the street. Like, what is she talking about?
Anyway.
hole all opens, and you see dogs looking at his organs coming out, and he was still somehow conscious, begging for food at the time.
He was begging for food while his organs were hanging out of his body.
Yeah. And I don't know why he was like pants were off. And I felt nothing.
His pants
That's
were just
the
off. We don't know
haunting.
why. They just happen to have his pants off, but she doesn't explain why. It's just like, let's throw in another detail. It's like he's begging for food. There's dead bodies everywhere. There's bodies floating in the river. People are pushing trains full of letters because they have no postal service. There's no phones. There's no running water. And a guy's running down the street begging for food with his intestines falling out. And then she just throws in for good measure that his pants are off. It's like we need one more crazy thing.
Oh God! All right, here we go.
To really say, like, I don't know how I felt nothing at that point. And that just looked horrible. And because it's just the fact that he's alive and so much flies flying by on his organs, and how he's somehow consciously begging for food. And I didn't feel anything.
You felt no
She's-
compassion.
She's
No.
literally
It was
saying
just
that his
normal.
organs are falling out while he's begging for food, and flies are literally on his organs that are out of his body. And Joe Rogan's there like, whoa, dang, that's crazy, bro.
Yeah, I mean, he's done some good interviews, but this is just embarrassing, man. Come on.
Yeah. So that was like daily life thing. And then in the hospital when I was 13 years old, my parents took me to hospital because I was bad stomachache. And then we don't have like x-ray machines. We don't have MRI, none of that. Just doctor rubs your belly. And then he says, oh, we need to operate on her. I think her like appendix were bursting.
Wait. They have no X-ray machines, but they can do operations to remove someone's appendix
And they can do it without running water
or electricity or trains.
Or
or
something.
phones.
So that afternoon, they cut me open without any anesthesia. And but it's normal thing, people in North Korea operation without anesthesia. But the chances of you going to surgery is a lot higher for you getting infected because we don't have penicillin. The nurse is using a 1 needle to inject every single patient. So who do you know what the other person has? You get from much more sick by being in the hospital.
Oh my God! And the North Korean doctors share needles.
And they
They're
don't
the only
have,
doctors in the world that do that.
they're the only doctors in the world who run around with 1 needle, like
Just
heroin addicts in
stabbing
the
every
80s or
patient for
something.
fun.
Stabbing and she's saying that she literally had herself with no anesthesia while she was awake, cut open for an operation for appendicitis, and she's still here. And she just went through that.
Well, Elizabeth commented saying that Joe Rogan's just staring at her boobs and not paying attention, which you can't discount that possibility, honestly.
He's like, whoa,
Right.
crazy.
And this is where we don't, of course, have an indoor bathroom for the patient. We have to go outside. And in between there's a piles of dead human bodies.
So, hey, mom, I got to go to the outhouse. Watch out for all the dead bodies. Make sure you sift through the dead bodies.
Yeah, and the beggars, she's cut open with live, basically a vivisection, and she has to go to an outhouse with no running water around dead bodies while dead bodies are floating in the river and people are pushing a train filled with letters because there's no postal service. I mean, oh yeah, and the doctors, the unineedle, the 1 needle, everyone's getting stabbed. All right.
And she's dodging all of the rats and stray dogs and
that are eating the bodies.
Yeah, and all the emaciated kids who are all just waiting to eat her.
And that's when I was seeing this somehow rats eating human eyes first for some reason.
Because they're probably soft and easy to eat.
Oh man.
Joe,
God.
Because they're very soft.
So I guess he does believe this.
He's like,
This
they
is
always
insane.
eat the eyes because they're soft. That's the first thing the rats go for is the eyes. They're soft.
And in all seriousness, I've heard real stories about especially in the 70s and 80s in New York, when it was just like a horror show and there was so much poverty and violence, that apparently in poor neighborhoods in Brooklyn, in hospitals, there actually were rats who would try to bite the feet of patients. And that's actually real, unlike this. Those are real stories. But no one ever claimed that they were eating the patients. They were just trying to bite the patients. But anyway, here we go.
And these women, I don't know, in my age probably, short hair, wearing these flower pants, and when they're dead, all like their mouth is somehow open.
Wait, did you say
And they're
flower
all
pants?
short hair, wearing this somehow rats eating human eyes first for some reason.
Because they're probably soft and easy to eat.
And these women, I don't know, in my age probably, short hair, wearing these flower pants, and when they're dead, all like their mouth is somehow open, and their all eyes are hollow, and you see children like looking at the rats and laughing and chasing them. And
Wait, so she's saying that this woman who had her eyes eaten out was wearing flower pants?
Well, maybe she took the pants from the guy whose intestines were out, who was begging for food, who had
It was
no pants.
pantless.
The pantless man gave his flower pants to the lady whose eyes were eaten out by rats, while the children played with the rats.
All right, here we go.
Very
adults
creative.
telling them like, don't eat those, you're gonna get sick from it. But of course kids don't care. Like even finding a rat is delicacy, because
A rat is a delicacy in North Korea.
But she's trying to say that rats are rare and like to find it is a delicacy, but then she's saying they're everywhere.
And then they're just eating people all over. That they're just eating. If there's like big piles of dead bodies, then the rats would just be eating all the dead bodies. Why would they need to eat people alive?
Exactly. And I was joking at the beginning when I was like, she's going to talk about rats eating the people and then people eating the rats, but she really is.
even finding a snake is a big prize. You don't find those like often.
So they were finding the rats and then just trying to eat them?
Yeah.
Were they eating them raw?
Sometimes if you find the skin, you do, but they do find some like fire and roast them.
So they
Sometimes people eat the rats raw.
She said sometimes if you find the skin, you eat it raw.
What does that mean? Like if it has no hair?
It's kind of like when you get salmon skin sushi or something. Like, but how
Like
can
the
you eat it?
naked mole
How can
rat?
you eat a rat raw? Like just like rawr.
There's like naked mole rats. This is what do they call it? What do the French eat? What do they call that? The
Escargot.
beef tartare.
Yeah.
Rats tartare. It's a delicacy.
But sometimes you can find a fire and cook the rats in an open flame. It's a delicacy.
Here we go.
They were excited to find a rat to eat.
Yeah,
So they were catching them with their hands.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course they do catch them around with their hands, and these piles of human bodies. Like she was on top. That's why I was able to see her wearing this flower pants till this. And then like her eyes are so hollow. It's like when you look at the human body, like nothing is left. I think that's what. It's not like just death is sad. It's just like how it becomes nothing. So
Right.
empty inside. She does not know the shame or pain. Just she was lying there like that. And you see children just chasing them and laughing and try to catch the rats.
And the children didn't feel anything being around the dead bodies. Just it was
No,
normal.
It's our daily normal thing. Seeing a death is like our daily life.
And they would eat the rats and then they would get sick and some
Yeah.
of them would die.
Yeah. A
And
lot
then-
of them die.
And then the rats would eat them.
Yeah. It's like the cycle we talk about. It's like that's a spring is for North Korea, a season of death.
And so the diseases that they would get from the rats, they were
the
willing
rat
to risk
eating
those
cycle. The cycle of eating rats. It's a vicious cycle.
The circle of life.
diseases just because of hunger.
Because when you're there's a North Korean proverb. There's no wish for the person who died after their stomach is full. So even in middle of the earthquake, the North Koreans not try to run. So my mom was talking about the day when she was in the university. There's earthquake happening. And do you know what these students doing is not running out of the building and try to survive. They go to kitchen. So before they die, they eat at least. So they can die. So if you
Oh my God. They're all just suicidal maniacs who won't run from an earthquake. They want to die in the earthquake.
I'm having some Wi-Fi issues here, but if it's okay, it's okay. There's a storm coming through, but I think it should work. But you
Well,
can
make
hear me
sure
okay.
if there's an earthquake, if there's a hurricane, make sure you eat in the kitchen and don't run out of your house.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll get devoured by rats out here if I lose my Wi-Fi. But honestly, like there have been there has been famine in North Korea, which was
Yeah.
brought on by sanctions. It was explicitly acknowledged that the US State Department knew this was happening and did not want food relief to come in. This was after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And she's playing on the stereotype of what took place in the 90s in North Korea. But this is obvious, like it's obviously false, but there is clear proof that Yeonmi Park has fabricated her own personal story again and again, and she's been exposed, including by a defense intelligence official named Mike Bassett. She was publicly exposed. And
Well,
it
there's
doesn't
1 minute
matter.
left. There's 1 minute left. We'll finish this just
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's. I mean, I just want to see where this goes. If aliens are going to come in here soon or something.
You have that promise of eating a one meal. They're gonna risk everything for that.
So it's just an entire country in a perpetual state of starvation.
Yeah, it's. I remember playing with this game with my sister as a young girl. I never ate till I felt full. So I would compare myself. Like I tell her, like I can eat 100 bread, and she's like, I can eat the mountains of bread. I can eat like 10,000 more than what you just said, because I don't know the limits of my stomach. Because I never tested it.
So you always were hungry.
Always hungry. Never felt full.
Catch new episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, there has been famine, although not for like the entire history of North Korea. There were moments of difficulty where there was a lack of food caused by these suffocating sanctions, this blockade that North Korea has been under for over 70 years, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and it's amazing that Joe Rogan has actually shown the ability to be skeptical about a lot of establishment narratives, and even to be attacked harshly for it. But here he's just like, whew. And I think part of it does have to do with her presence. It's kind of like you can't question her because it's questioning the voice of someone and their lived experience. It's like how we were always told, like, listen to Syrian voices, but only the voices of the like dissidents and the opposition movement. And if you question them at all, you are a genocide denier. But I mean, I did a documentary that partly touched on Yeonmi Park about the National Endowment for Democracy, which cultivates a lot of North Korean defectors. They're paid sometimes $860,000 for their testimony. Usually they get like upwards of $40,000 just for coming in. There's a reality show that's been on South Korean TV where defectors actually compete for who has the wildest story about the North. And it's just like a national pastime of demonizing the North. But maybe we could play.
Well, quick note. Here's the BBC. South Korea boosts reward for defectors from North to $860,000.
Yeah.
So much money. Oh
I mean,
my God.
I mean, come on, man. Like who among our audience would be willing to lie about North Korea for that much money? Like, I'm sure we'll have some takers.
Insane.
I mean, imagine if Mexico was paying a North American gringos to talk about how bad it is here.
$10,000.
There'd be some serious payouts, just like a free dental operation, which people go to Mexico for that anyway. So like, I got my teeth fixed and all I had to do is talk about being brutalized by a cop. Like it would all be true. But yeah, I did this documentary where I just highlighted some of the inconsistencies in Yeonmi's story.
Should I play it?
Yeah, go ahead and play it.
Here we go.
Human Rights Act in 2004. But Kwan too was unmasked. Sorry, this is the wrong part. And quickly disappeared
it's coming
from
up.
the public eye. Okay. Yeonmi Park is perhaps the famous North Korean defector. She emerged on the international scene at the One World Summit in Ireland in 2014, telling a heart-rending tale of escape through China.
North Korea is an unimaginable country. There is only one channel on TV.
No! But important.
Wait. I thought you said there's no electricity. So why would they need TV if there's no electricity? And there's only one channel. There's
How
one
can there
channel.
Be no phones, but they have TV.
There's one channel on the TV that doesn't work because there's no electricity.
Pieces of the story.
Here, I'll continue.
Rats have to like power the TV.
I also want to say again, it's so cynical. She's crying. She's probably coached and all this. And also, at first they used to always put her in like this traditional Korean clothing, as if people in North Korea just walk around like that every day. But people wear just like normal clothes, like
Yeah.
pants and shirts. It's
No,
weird.
no, they wear flowered pants or no pants with their eyes eaten by rats.
All right, I'll continue here.
There is no internet.
But important pieces of the story Park told at the summit differed from her previous testimony. One of the many inconsistencies in Park's story was documented by journalist Marianne Jolly, who noted that Park initially claimed she had escaped through China with her mother and father.
Where did you cross into? You crossed into China?
Where did you cross into?
Yes, I crossed to China, so I escaped my mom and my father, 3 of us.
But at the One World Summit, Park claimed that she trekked through China with only her mother, who she said was raped by a Chinese broker, adding an entirely new and extremely dramatic piece to her narrative.
Today, I escaped North Korea. I saw my mother raped. The rapist was a Chinese broker. He targeted me. My mother allowed herself to be raped in order to protect me.
All along, Park was profiting from her fame, earning $12,000 and up for speeches, and receiving critical backing from a libertarian political network that included the for-profit Freedom Factory and the Atlas Foundation.
I just want to point out really quickly, this is a hilarious article. Claimed North Korean defector earns $41,000 per speech, completely incorrect. Actual rates start from 12.5 thousand.
Much less. I love how the fact checks are just like, they're all diversions. It's just like, oh man, I got that wrong. It's actually just a quarter less.
Yeah, so like people will look at the headline and be like, see, it's false that she got paid. And it's like, no, she just got paid slightly less than whatever this person claimed.
And NK News is a site that's funded by the US government through the National Endowment for Democracy. And it's always reporting that Kim Jong-un is dead. And then he like surfaces later. It's like he's almost gaming them. Like, I'm going to disappear for 2 weeks and then show up slimmer and like living my best life. But
imagine actual rates start at 12.5 thousand plus fees. So start, imagine that, imagine like they're broadcasting that like a measly, the actual rates start at a measly $12,000.
Well, it's incorrect that she earns $41,000 per speech. She could earn $25,000 for one speech and $50,000 for another, but it's still incorrect because that's just not every speech. So fact check, like every fact check now is just about diverting people from some establishment narrative that is itself really dubious.
Well, in fact, in one of the main fact check websites, their co-founder was just exposed for like being a massive plagiarist. He just like copied everything from like the Washington Post and New York Times, which says everything. Like all they do is just repeat whatever the New York Times says, and that's their standard for fact checking.
Yep.
All right, so I'll continue here.
Speeches and receiving critical backing from a libertarian political network that included the for-profit Freedom Factory and the Atlas Foundation. She was also made a media fellow by the Oslo Freedom Forum, an operation run by Venezuelan-American oligarch Thor Halvorsen.
And again, you said Venezuelan American, but also Norwegian. His last name is Halvorsen, the renowned Latino last name. The most popular Latino last names are Rodriguez, Gonzalez, Hernandez, and Halvorsen. Obviously, like this guy, he's the grandson of the Norwegian monarch's consul who was living in Venezuela. And he's from one of the richest families in all of Venezuela.
And he's the first cousin of Leopoldo Lopez, who is the de facto leader of the US-backed Venezuelan opposition, like the real mentor of Juan Guaido.
And just again, look who he's sitting next to. Gary Kasparov.
Just crazy neocon Russian
chess player turned neocon mercenary. All right, so I'll continue here.
Foundation. She was also made a media fellow by the Oslo Freedom Forum, an operation run by Venezuelan-American oligarch Thor Halvorsen that weaponizes human rights in the service of neoconservative foreign policy objectives. Park played a key role in Halvorsen's Hack Them Back campaign, which aimed to disrupt peace talks between North and South Korea. Mike Bassett, a former reconnaissance soldier at the Korean Demilitarized Zone and an information warfare officer, wrote that her change in narrative warrants serious scrutiny because that narrative changed as a result of a political and economic agenda, rather than a genuine desire to inform the public about the best way to liberate North Koreans from oppression.
That's incredible right there. I mean, this is someone as establishment as you can get. Just admitting that that she's a mercenary, and this word has been so abused, but this is what a grifter is.
Yes.
Like, grifter has become one of the most over abused, just ridiculous insults. This is a definitional grifter.
Well, yeah, I mean, people use the word grifter a lot in like left liberal circles whenever anyone has any success when going off narrative. That's when I see them use it a lot. And they'll be like, Glenn Greenwald is a grifter. But here you have someone who's literally lying for a living in the service of the most powerful government in the world. And the whole US media still takes her seriously. And it's not just Joe Rogan. It's like the New York Times. They prepared a video with Yeonmi Park. I mean, as we'll see here.
And I just want to highlight this again. She's making so much money on this. So much money. It's just sick.
Despite being exposed for changing her narrative again and again, Park returned to the national stage this June thanks to the New York Times, which featured her in a video aimed at undermining the Trump-Kim summit.
When I saw the president of South Korea hugging Kim Jong-un, I asked myself, would he do the same with Hitler?
Oh my God. That's the New York Times.
Yes, this is like
everything.
For the East Coast intelligentsia, this is what they're getting.
Oh,
I mean, they would
God.
never publish an opinion piece by us. And, a lot of people disagree with me about things, but I'm not like just flagrantly making stuff up. But they would never, ever do that. In fact, I met one of the people at the New York Times video opinion section at a film festival in New York. And they said that we would like you to submit a video on the treatment of African asylum seekers in Israel. Like, we'd really like that. And I went back and forth with them. Like, they basically commissioned it. They commissioned it. And me and David Sheen made this video about what was happening there, which was just out of control. And it was like a on the ground documentary for them. And they were like, this is not what we were looking for. Get the hell out of here. So we published it at The Nation, and it's gotten like 500,000 views. But it's obvious the New York Times is just is itself an op.
Yeah, and this reminds me of when the New York Times had Joanna Hausman as their so-called Venezuela expert. Again, another extremely Latino last name up there with Halvorsen, Hausman. Two very Latino last names. But Joanna Hausman was in this video about how evil the Maduro regime is and all this. And they didn't disclose the fact that her father, Ricardo Hausman, a right-wing neoliberal economist at Harvard, he was the main economic advisor overseeing the neoliberal economic program for the shadow regime. And the coup for the shadow regime created by the U.S. of Juan Guaido. And the New York Times didn't mention that at all. I mean, it's that was like complete journalistic malpractice. I mean, this is too. This woman Park is a complete fraud, but it just shows how low their standards are. And this is like the peak of U.S. journalism.
They'll do anything. They will do anything to promote war and sabotage peace. And that's what they're doing here. They're sabotaging peace in Korea.
I just want to point out that I guarantee you the Libertarian Atlas Network and the people who are paid, like these paid consultants who are paid to train Park, I guarantee you they told her to use Godwin's law. They were like, it always works. Just compare him to Hitler. It's always going to work.
Yeah, everything you see her do is based on kind of like market research and what works, because the dissident defector network has been in effect for decades, and they've been testing these methods on populations the same way that ad executives do. They're just using the Edward Bernays school of propaganda, which is well established. He was, I think, Freud's nephew, and he helped basically devise the most effective mechanisms of the US ad industry of Madison Ave. So here you have kind of Madison Ave coming together with Langley, Virginia.
Yeah, well, Bernays, I mean, he should be so well known because he helped create marketing, which is like the most American thing ever, marketing. One of the only things that the US is good at is marketing. It's not good at anything else. It can't build infrastructure. It can't do anything. It can't even win its own imperialist wars, but it can like market the hell out of everything. And that comes from Bernays, who took all of these ideas from, I think it was his uncle Freud. They took all these ideas from psychology and combined them with business. And Bernays, his clients were like cigarette companies, and Bernays was hired by cigarette companies to figure out how to get women to smoke cigarettes, because at that time, in the early 20th century, cigarettes were seen as masculine and they were seen as anti-feminine, non-feminine. So he like used movies, like Hollywood movies. They would pay women in movies to smoke cigarettes to make it seem like more feminine and cool. And they got people addicted to cigarettes. Like that's all the US has ever been good at.
Great results years later.
So here, I'll keep going.
The neoconservative New York Times columnist Barry Weiss also cited Park's questionable narrative to attack the peace summit, writing that Park herself had been raped on her way through China. Yet Park never made this claim.
And by the way, look at what Barry Weiss wrote here. She is using her freedom to roar against the dictator whom she compares to Hitler. You just always got to throw in Godwin's law.
Wouldn't you be offended if someone falsely claimed you were raped?
So cynical.
I mean, there's no dignity there at all.
So cynical. They made their way on foot through the freezing Gobi Desert, following the stars north to freedom in Mongolia. Oh God, just so cynical. Oh man. All right, but I'll continue here.
He wanted to rape Yeonmi, and her mother protected her. She said, how could you do this to a 13-year-old girl? And he said, well, they're 11, 12, 13. It's all the same. So to get themselves out of that situation, your mom offered herself.
Well, they admit that Barry Weiss lied there and have never had to issue a correction.
Wait, is the guy crying?
Yeah.
He's like crying on her behalf?
It's like the Star Wars bar over here. I don't even know, but yeah, he's crying on her behalf because they need to like help the crowd emote.
Yeah, because everyone in the crowd is like a reptilian, like corporate CEO who has never felt a single human emotion.
It's or like, yeah, One Young World. It's like European college students get shepherded in there so they can get NGO jobs. It's that kind of thing. Is this the shit I'm supposed to believe in? Okay. What is the official ideology? Tell me. Okay. Yeah.
She's consoling him. It's so weird.
I think it's gonna be easier for me than for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because you actually believe her lie and she doesn't. Exactly. So she's not crying.
And she's smiling on the inside because she's probably making tens of thousands of dollars for the speaking engagement. So, all right, I'll keep going.
For me, than for you.
The Transitional Justice
we
Working
can
Group.
Stop it here.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just the whole phenomenon of North Korean defectors. She's just the most effective one, and so she was chosen. But the other issue is that so many of the other prominent ones have been exposed and collapsed. And you see that in the documentary that I made. There was a guy named Shin Dong-hook who testified to the U.S. Congress And he said that he witnessed live human experimentation in North Korean prisons. And this was a really significant piece of testimony because Congress was preparing after the Bush administration sabotaged the nuclear deal, the Clinton administration's nuclear deal with North Korea, leading to North Korea actually getting nuclear weapons 10 years later. They passed the North Korean Human Rights Act in 2004, which was a big sanctions bill to actually increase starvation in North Korea. So Shin Dong-hook delivers this powerful testimony. And he was unmasked as a complete fabulist who fabricated the testimony. I mean, I don't know if you want to play that section, but there's so many defectors from the DPRK to South Korea we've heard about that were it was just 13 women were said to have been kidnapped. But it turned out they were led by, I think, a restaurant manager into South Korea for money and were then enticed into testifying. That was all reported in the New York Times, and then it fell apart. If you go to
I think I found it in the documentary.
I think it's like at 2 minutes, 15 seconds.
Yeah, I think I found it. So I'll start here.
While many defectors tell harrowing tales of escape from political repression, others have been exposed as serial fabricators, lured by hefty sums of cash.
I just want to point out, The Guardian is like, I mean, it's just like the New York Times, except British. I mean, it's so close to the British intelligence agencies that basically just feed The Guardian everything it reports on, at least on, NatSac reporting. But even The Guardian has this piece saying that North Korean defector testimonies often fall apart. So, I mean, this has even been acknowledged in some mainstream circles, but then they just go on a year later and keep interviewing these frauds.
Yeah, they do. The same outlets that promote these frauds then wind up kind of debunking them. And it's a phenomenon in mainstream media where a story gets around on social media that's absolutely bonkers. It could be on any subject, Russiagate, whatever, anything that's part of an Edward Bernays style propaganda campaign. And then a correction is issued that no one pays attention to. The paper, the media institution covers its ass, but the damage is already done. And so that's what happened here.
Exactly. So here I'll continue with this.
Have been exposed as serial fabricators, lured by hefty sums of cash. In 2017, South Korea quadrupled the payout for testimony from North Korean defectors to a whopping $860,000. The bounty has incentivized colorful accounts of sadistic and unusually creative human rights abuses.
Such an awful movie.
According to one defector, a crowd of 10,000 was forced to watch the execution of 11 musicians for the crime of viewing pornography. He said the musicians were blown to pieces with anti-aircraft guns, then run over with tanks. Another defector claimed that female prisoners were raped and then forced to hand their babies over to be used as food for hungry guard dogs.
So ridiculous.
In 2016, news of the defection of 13 North Korean waitresses provided a boost to Pyongyang's opponents. But recently, the waitress's manager admitted to tricking the women into leaving under pressure from the South Korean intelligence services. The scandal is now under UN investigation. A separate UN investigation accusing Kim Jong-un of crimes against humanity was marred by fabricated testimony from defectors like Shin Dong-hook, who confessed to inventing
escaped from Gulag.
Became the poster boy for human rights abuses in North Korea, retelling his story around the world, leveraging his celebrity to convince world leaders to get tough with the North Korean regime.
There's him with Bush and Kerry and Samantha Power.
After years of telling the same story, Shin was admitting not all of it was true. The man who launched a movement had been exposed as a liar.
Testimony to U.S. Congress by another defector.
It can just go on. It goes on and on. But yeah, I mean, the
They just make it all
there-
up.
The lesson there for Yeonmi Park is just never admit that you made it up and just keep going, because this guy had a crisis of conscience apparently.
Well, yeah, I want to point out that she has continued the grift at a whole new level. She now has like a really popular YouTube channel where she has 675,000 subscribers and growing constantly, and makes these insane fake news videos where she just makes shit up with absolutely zero evidence because it's all totally fabricated. And
it seems like she's not being suppressed the way we are for some reason.
Obviously, definitely not. I'm sure Google is encouraging it.
Definitely. I mean, isn't Google involved in TED Talks somehow? I mean, it's all kind of like one thing.
It's all a big blob, big tech,
Yeah.
Silicon Valley.
So
look at this video. She said, North Korea's unbelievable quarantine rule that we all must be aware of. And it says, quarantine and die or just die. And there's a firing squad. Quarantine or just die. Oh my God. And then of course this brings us to this video she did. You can see here that I actually watched it. I mean, I watched there was
how can you not?
There was a 7.5-minute video, and I watched all of it, waiting for her to provide at least some, like, to pretend to provide evidence, and there was nothing. And then she has another video. I don't know what the difference is. I guess this was a stream. She did like an hour-long stream claiming shocking resurgence of cannibalism in North Korea, and I just skimmed through it, and I didn't see her quote any fake evidence. She didn't even try. And then I watched the 7-minute and 30-second video, breaking. Shocking resurgence of cannibalism in North Korea. I went through the video. She doesn't cite anything. She says that there's this breaking story. She doesn't quote even like the US government funded fake news outlets in South Korea. She just makes it up. There's no sources for it.
I think a lot of people watch it just for kicks. It's like a ghost story. It's like you sit around the campfire and Yeonmi Park just tells you some of the craziest shit you've ever heard. Yeah. And they don't need the evidence. And then it's North Korea, you know, the hermit nation. So who cares? I mean, like what do we know about that place anyway? I wanted to highlight actually a documentary that everyone who's watching this should watch. It's free on YouTube. And it's called The Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang. It's one of the only documentaries that actually presents the other side of the story, and it's told through the voices of actual North Korean defectors to the South. It was filmed by a Korean filmmaker in South Korea, and these defectors are actually saying that they regret coming there. Many of them were tricked into going to the South. They thought they would be able to go back, and they're now trapped, and that they actually admire North Korea's revolution. I thought I had highlighted one testimony there from one person. I think it's at 8 minutes and 85 seconds. But I guess.
Yeah, let me.
And this is someone who was tricked into defecting and really regrets it. And his comments are absolutely amazing, but I really recommend the whole film.
You said 8 minutes and 85.
Yeah, I should have it like lined up here. Sorry, it's 14 minutes and 45 seconds.
14:45.
Yeah, if you just.
Here we go. All right. And for people who want to see this themselves, this is on the Liberation News YouTube channel. But here, I'll play it here.
We're not getting sound.
Oh yeah, my bad. Let me do it again. I have to.
StreamYard's tough. You actually have to.
All right, here we go.
Specify audio only.
All right, here we go.
난 집단적으로 미쳤다고 생각했어요 그때 이 사람. 왜냐하면 북에 대해서 너무도 모르니까. 예. 그러니까 어느 저 교회 무슨 뭐 거기서 무슨 뭐 한다고 해서 나갔어요. 좀 나오라고 해서. 나가서 뭐 거기 무슨 뭐라 하니까 그거 보고 뭐 이런 학습인지 뭐인지 한다고 뭐 성경 학습인지 한다고. 그러면 참가했는데 뭐 돌아가면 질문하더라고요. 누구를 제일 존경하는가? 난 당당히 김일성 장군을 내가 제일 존경한다고 했죠. 왜? 나는 중국에서도 몇 년 있었어요. 나는 내 다른 거는 몰라도 내 이 조선에 내 북에서 살면서 그 나라 지도자들에서 내가 정말 어떤 사람들인지 대한 것은 내가 확실하게 알거든. 중국에 있으면서 나는 중국에서 나오는 책들을 내가 조선 언어로 번역된 거 내가 많이 봤어요. 김일성 장군이라는 분이 어떤 분인가 내가 거기서 확실하게 알고 있었고. 그러니까 당연히 그렇게 말할 수밖에. 나도 조선 민족인데. 그런데 그걸 이놈들이 가서 그 경찰에다 꼬장한 거지. 그러니까 나는 여기서 그러니까
These damn church people.
이게 특별 대상 관리다 이렇게 돼버린 거예요.
He's under state surveillance
그러니까
because he
신청해서
defected.
여건이 안 나와요. 그래서 인터넷에다가 글을 좀 올렸지. 그렇지 않다는 걸로 니들이 잘못 생각하고 있다. 그리고 김일성 장군은 어떤 사람인지 내가 그래서 북의 말이 너희들이 믿기 싫으면 그 믿지 마라. 그러면 중국이나 아니면 일본 놈들조차도 김일성 장군에 대해서는 올바로 썼다. 그놈들 간홍 기록이라는 게 있어요. 김일성 장군에 대해서 쓴 게. 근데 이거 맞아 봐보니까 가짜 김일성이 뭐요. 일본 놈들 자체도 북의 김일성을 김일성 장군에 대해서 그대로 그렇게 다 썼거든. 대단한. 솔직히 말해서
Yeah, so that's the idea. Yeah.
So basically, you know, he is duped or told to defect because he was told you can make a lot of money there and things are better. He was taken through China by a broker. He goes there and realizes that he has to change his entire political worldview, that everything about the North is a lie, that he has to basically renounce his support for socialism, and that when he voices any opposition to the official ideology of South Korea, he gets reported to the police and ruthlessly antagonized on social media. And obviously the payouts don't come. And the whole time he's under, the surveillance of state security because they want to ensure that you're compliant and that you become basically a propaganda mechanism, like a propaganda marionette. That documentary is really remarkable in busting the lie of the defector and how everyone is just fleeing North Korea because rats are eating people's eyes out and people are pushing trains filled with letters because there's no post office. And, you know, I think the North Korean defectors and the constant flood of lies is a really good way of just looking at all of the dissidents that infest our media and that are put right before our eyes constantly to tell us why we need to go to war to save them or why we need to sanction the people who live in the country that they fled.
Yeah, really quickly, before we transition, I just want to show, you sent me this link. This is a YouTuber who's not in any way political. This is not like some North Korean propaganda channel. This is just, it's called Matt Travels. It's just this guy. A traveler. He just like posts stuff. Here's Burkina Faso, Nepal, India. He just travels around and just posts video clips. And he did one in Pyongyang in North Korea. And it's really interesting. I mean, look at the footage here. And surprise, surprise, there is electricity. There are no dead bodies. People are not floating on dead bodies. These are boats, but here's people walking around. There's the bus, which is working. This is downtown in the plaza. People just walking around. Big skyscrapers. And then here, just people walking, going to work, just living normal lives. People driving.
Actually, I got a really fascinating video of Pyongyang. I just sent it to you. If you can throw this on the screen, I'll explain what's going on here.
Yeah, one sec. I mean, just look at this. Like, it's
no
like a normal city.
She said there's no electricity. There's no she's saying like, you know, there are rats and dead bodies piling up.
Where are all the dead bodies everywhere?
It looks very orderly. It looks much more orderly than Washington, D.C. And you know, there have been times coming home where I had to park far from my house because streets were blocked off because there were dead bodies from shootings. So I don't know if North Koreans are dealing with that. But I just sent you a video, Ben, of Pyongyang from people, some of the few Americans I know who've actually visited there. And they're actually from the area of DC I live in, which is Ward 8. It's Southeast DC. I'm from one of the, you know, I live in one of the poorer, most monolithically black areas of DC. And these are two rappers from one neighborhood over who actually went to Pyongyang and filmed the first rap video in the capital of North Korea. And they came back just talking about how favorable they were to the people they met there, how much they loved it, how they admired the society, and how much they enjoyed themselves getting to meet the people there, and how they were themselves admired and were treated with total respect. When here in DC, they're effectively segregated and looked at as like potential criminals. So yeah, go on. And
here I have to show the audio.
Yeah.
This is incredible. A rap video shot in North Korea. Here we go. And there's the metro where
this is the metro. This is the train where she says that, you know, they're pushing. It's like a very modern metro station.
Yeah, and they're telling them not to film or whatever, but I mean, here they are. There's downtown.
The downtown is
so Pac-Man and Peso,
downtown.
I guess, is the name.
Pac-Man's from Congress Heights, like one area over from Anacostia.
Yeah, and just people hanging out.
Yeah, you can see daily life there.
Yeah, and then just like in this this dock area.
Although this might have been before they went to North Korea and they're in China.
Well, let me. Yeah, they might be in China, but. Here we go. Escape to North Korea. Oh, well, I don't know, whatever. No, this is the prelude, Max. Here we go. That was the prelude. Here we go. Escape to North Korea. There we go. That must have been China.
That was China. This is North Korea. The first rap video ever shot in North Korea.
This is awesome.
And they were given official permission to film this and perform. There you can see like buses, the train that everyone.
Yeah, there's the metro. Right here. Bunch of people, and there's lights. Surprise! Believe it or not, there's lights on.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Escape to no career, another murder zone. 007 on the mission, feel like James Bond. They say it's dangerous when my streets be a hill zone.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a bunch of just people just hanging out, living their normal lives. The portrayals of North Korea are just so ridiculous. They're just like so cartoonishly false and absurd.
My future looking kinda high, sitting on the moon. So if I die today, my name gon' die in history too. So Pac-Man.
So yeah, it's a short video, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there are plenty of other, or a few other films. The Haircut is a really good film about North Korea.
Yeah, the Haircut's good.
And basically these two guys who are kind of like us try to go to investigate whether everyone has to get their haircut like Kim Jong-un in North Korea, because that is an actual mainstream media claim. There was a story that was circulating that everyone was forced to get his haircut. So they went and used it as an avenue to show the reality of DPRK society and how it was a lot more normal than we think, and more traditionally Korean than people want to acknowledge.
And this is the channel. It's called Boy Boy. They're actually really funny. They have a lot of awesome videos. A lot of people know this film. I guess it got over 500,000 views. It's a really good documentary they did, but they have a lot of other awesome videos. Boy Boy is the channel. Anyway, yeah.
So yeah, I mean the most common defector dissident we hear about now is the Uyghur defector dissident because of the great power competition with China, the new Cold War with China. The Uyghur dissidents are being basically shipped over to the US through Kazakhstan, through an entity called Altazai or something, which is in Kazakhstan. And they basically collect their testimonies, decide who's the most charismatic and willing to talk about the genocide in Xinjiang. And then they're flown to the US. One of them is named Tursunai Ziawadun. And Daniel Dumbrill, who's a friend of ours, I was actually trying to get him on the stream, but he's 12 hours ahead in China. He's done a lot of digging into Tursunai's record. Tursunai, basically, any article you read now in the New Yorker, New York Times, she's going to come up talking about how she was in a concentration camp, and she says that she was raped and brutalized. But when in her initial interview back when she was in Kazakhstan before she was flown over to the US, she said that no one touched her while she was in one of these, what China calls vocational centers, what the State Department calls concentration camps. And she basically just changed her whole story. Like, she admits it. And she was recently highlighted by Samantha Power, who's the director of USAID, as the kind of keystone of the case against China. She's becoming kind of the Yeonmi Park, but she's already basically admitted that she has fabricated the essence, the heart of her story, and yet she's going around everywhere. Yeah, I don't know if you can like.
So yeah, here's the tweet here, and one former camp detainee said she was injected until she stopped having her period and kicked repeatedly in the lower stomach. Now she can't have children. And then here's the BuzzFeed article. She said, "I wasn't beaten or abused." So, I mean,
The
just
hardest
totally
part was
inconsistent.
mental. I mean, so it's just like an open fabrication. And like, we're not even arguing, or I'm not arguing that repression isn't taking place, but that argument isn't enough, obviously, for the people, the forces coaching these defectors. They need them to embellish. They're asking them to embellish because it needs to resonate. And then the media's just lapping it up. And we're not just talking about like the New York Post or Fox News. We're talking about the New Yorker that's interviewing them. And then CGTN, the Chinese state media channel, has actually been going and meeting with the families of a lot of these defectors. And they go and say, we cannot believe they're saying this. It's like offensive to us that they're like claiming this happened. This is not the person we knew. And then US media says, well, that's the families are being threatened by the state of China. And it reminds me a lot of, I don't even know if you remember the Dusty Boy, Omran.
Oh, yeah.
I actually didn't prepare the video for this broadcast, but you can maybe like pull up his photo. Like, everyone remembers the Dusty Boy, Omran from Syria. It was in Aleppo where there was an airstrike in eastern Aleppo in one of these 5 neighborhoods held by Salafi jihadi factions backed by Turkey and the US, basically backed by NATO, that were waging like just wreaking havoc on the rest of the city. And it was kind of like the base of the insurgency. And he was pulled out of an airstrike by the White Helmets, out of the rubble of an airstrike by the White Helmets. He was photographed by opposition activists who were embedded with the Salafi jihadi factions in an ambulance, which was provided by Turkey. I mean, you see Aleppo Media Center up here. And it turns out that he was posed for this photo. He didn't want to be in it. And his father was very upset with what was happening. And then
his father supports the Syrian government.
Well, that's what I'm building up to.
Yeah.
Is that his father later came out after this photograph, which everyone watching this has seen, was plastered all over newspapers across the world. I mean, it was on the cover of every newspaper, and it was basically saying we have to do something. The US military has to go in and save these children. It turned out that his father, as you said, Ben, was a supporter of the Syrian government who was disgusted by what happened when these so-called rebels took over their area and began terrorizing them and forcing them into silence and submission. And then he came out in U.S. media. Well, first it started at Al Mayadeen, Lebanese media, and you can see it was reported here in the Times of London, the MI5's favorite paper. And the narrative was spun that this child and his father were threatened by the Syrian government into making this statement, that they didn't say it of their own free will, which is just obvious bullshit. So that whole thing just fell apart, but they're like,
and not just that, Max, there were reports that apparently Qatari media like Al Jazeera, or I don't know if it was another Qatari outlet, apparently offered to pay his father like thousands of dollars.
It was a Saudi outlet
to speak out against the Syrian government, and he refused.
Yeah. And then who was the Aylan Kurdi was another similar story.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is familiar with the image of Aylan Kurdi washed up at Bodrum, the Turkish beach area. He was trying to get to Europe. And we were told that this is another one of the crimes of Assad. It turns out that his family were Kurdish and they were fleeing ISIS. And
he has his own Wikipedia article, which is another like intelligence run propaganda outlet, Wikipedia.
Yeah.
But there's an entire Wikipedia just about his death.
Yeah. So basically his aunt, Tima Kurdi, comes to the United States. I should have highlighted this video, but she comes to the United States to speak out against the U.S. policy in Syria. And she's brought by Tulsi Gabbard. I met her at Tulsi Gabbard's press conference against arming the so-called rebels on Capitol Hill. I was one of like 5 reporters there. Tulsi Gabbard, most demonized member of Congress that I can remember, demonized by her own party, thrown under the bus by Bernie Sanders for this. And now she's kind of like gone into like a different realm that I wouldn't call necessarily progressive. It's her own little independent thing. But she brought Tima Kurdi to the US, and I met Tima Kurdi and watched her comments, and she was just like ripping what the CIA was doing. She was saying they're sending weapons to cause refugees. They're sending weapons to the most extreme people who forced my family to flee and are responsible for the death of my nephew. And it just totally just destroyed the way that image and the way it was deployed and put it in an entirely different framework. And Tima Kurdi was just, you see one of these initial media appearances. After this, she was just disappeared. And like no one came to this press conference to meet her. I just wound up hanging out with her afterwards because there were no other reporters around because she said
this is again the aunt of that little boy Aylan Kurdi who's dead body washed up on the beach. This is his aunt on CNN.
Vice chair of the DNC is with us now from Washington. ISIS, a plan which he says
for armed military.
The audio is really bad.
From the president.
Here.
Hurt me a lot. Yeah, honestly, it does hurt me a lot when I heard this about the indefinite ban for the Syrian refugees. All what I was thinking about my family and other Syrian people who lost their life trying to go somewhere safe. And to be honest.
So that's the part that CNN's fine with, like saying that, rightfully criticizing Trump's awful ban on Syrian refugees. So I'm sure CNN loved that, but then she starts criticizing the war itself.
I am here. I was hoping to see President Trump to stop arming the terrorists, stop supporting regime change.
That's so forbidden.
She said, tell Trump to stop arming the terrorists, stop supporting regime change.
This policy who caused millions of the Syrian, my people, to flee their home.
So she doesn't mention the words Bashar al-Assad. She says, stop sending weapons to the terrorists, stop this policy of regime change that has led millions of my people to flee their homes.
Yeah, and that was the end of her. And I should have mentioned Anya Parampil back when she was at RT America, my very close colleague, was one of the only reporters, maybe the only reporter, to interview them at that press conference that took place after Tulsi Gabbard introduced this bill. It only got 15 co-sponsors. It was really unpopular to stop arming Al-Qaeda in US Congress. Controversial, led to Tulsi Gabbard being, character assassinated, including by like the people that were harshest on her are like the DSA dweebs. They really didn't like her stance on Syria. I wanted to talk, there's so many examples here that we have. But I think like we should just go through the most famous one now, which is the initial touchstone defector dissident story of Naira, who is said to just be a Kuwaiti girl who was witnessed unbelievable amounts of brutality by the Iraqi army of Saddam Hussein when they invaded Kuwait in 1991. And it was some of the most consequential testimony maybe ever delivered before Congress, at least in the post-Cold War era.
Yeah, so here she is. I'll go ahead and
up.
Yeah, actually I have, once again, I have to share the audio, but so this is Naira.
It's the second week after an invasion. I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
Totally false. Totally
It was
fake.
horrifying. I could not help but think of my nephew, who, if born premature, might have died that day as well. After I left the hospital, some of my friends and I distributed flyers condemning the Iraqi invasion until we were warned we might be killed if the Iraqis saw us. The Iraqis have destroyed everything in Kuwait. They stripped the supermarkets of food, the pharmacies of medicine, the factories of medical supplies, ransacked our houses, and tortured neighbors and friends. I saw and talked to a friend of mine after his torture and released by the Iraqis. He is 22, but he looked as though he could have been an old man. The Iraqis dunked his head into a swimming pool until he almost drowned. They pulled out his fingernails and applied electric shock to sensitive private parts of his body. He was lucky to survive.
Yeah, so it goes on and on. It sounds a lot like Yeonmi Park. You see the same.
It's so similar.
She really pioneered the method. She's the ultimate method actor. This was, I think, like October, I don't remember the month, in 1990. And she was brought to Congress by Tom Lantos, who was a huge neoconservative Democrat. He was always, his claim to fame or notoriety was that he was the only Holocaust survivor in Congress. And his whole thing was, we have to do this war and that war because never again. And he would always invoke the Holocaust. So he was basically housing all of these public relations firms at the offices of the Lantos Commission, which was congressionally, federally funded. And the Kuwaiti ambassador, meanwhile, was paying PR firms to coach Naira and tell her basically that it seems like they must have had to terrorize her into crying about something that was completely made up. And it was all exposed as a gigantic fraud, but not before George H.W. Bush delivered a nationally televised press conference about Naira and about what she saw to make the case for invading Iraq. His case for invading Iraq was largely based on her testimony, and Amnesty International wrote a long paper based on her testimony, which consolidated her as this reliable figure in US mainstream media. Amnesty later admitted it was completely bogus and retracted it. But again, not before the damage was done. And it's what led us to today. I mean, that was the first war that led us into the post 9/11 era, the invasion of Iraq, the dirty war.
And the wars in the NATO war in Yugoslavia, which was so similar, using the same tactics, all these lies, and people that just, they always rely on an individual who has some compelling story, but there's no way to prove it false or true. And then you just have to believe it on faith. And then what happens always is that a few years later, they finally admit that it was false. But like you said, after the damage is done. So here's an article in the New York Times, an op-ed from 1992. So this is well over a year after the U.S., by the way, was the one that destroyed Iraqi infrastructure. She was claiming that Iraq was destroying all the Kuwaiti infrastructure. In the Gulf War, the U.S. government, the military, intentionally bombed hospitals and electric plants and bridges and roads. Their goal was to destroy Iraqi infrastructure. And finally, after that, all those horrible war crimes and the infamous highway of death, I'll show photos of that. The Gulf War is not talked about enough. I mean, just how atrocious that war was. Finally, after the damage is all done, all the Iraqis are killed, they admit it was a deception on Capitol Hill, the New York Times. And they say here, they name that it was Tom Lantos of California who was responsible for it, the co-chairman of the Congressional Human Rights Caucus, part of the human rights industry. And they say that another piece of information was withheld. She was not just some Kuwaiti, but the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador. And here we go. How did the girl's testimony come about? It was arranged by the big public relations firm of Hill and Knowlton on behalf of a client. The Kuwaiti sponsored Citizens for a Free Kuwait, which was then pressing Congress for military intervention. Lantos, the congressman, knew the girl's identity, but concealed it from the public and from the other caucus co-chairman. So incredible. I mean, this neocon congressman,
she was lying.
He knew that she was coached and was the daughter of the ambassador. Just so cynical.
Yeah, I think that's how the story was kind of revealed as a fraud, was that she hid the fact, just as Joanna Hausman hid the fact that she was the daughter of one of the leading coup mongers in Venezuela. She hid the fact that she was the daughter of the ambassador. And like, once someone just all it took, there was no internet then. That was a big problem. I mean, if me or you were watching that in real time, we would have Googled her, and then it would have taken just a little bit of investigating, and we probably would have sniffed that out.
Yeah, find her Instagram or Facebook and see that, like, oh, she just happens to be hanging out with all of these Kuwaiti royals, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the ultimate like self-surveillance mechanism, Instagram, and they didn't have those then. So John MacArthur at Harper's started poking around, and it was he who kind of made the connection, and then the testimony totally fell apart. But Lantos knew all along, and there were no consequences for him. Lantos remains kind of part of this regime change infrastructure that we've been talking about with Thor Halvorsen. And here's one of the videos that his foundation, which was spun out of the Lantos Human Rights Commission in Congress, made with Thor Halvorsen's shady ass Human Rights Foundation, which is just, regime change central.
All right, here we go. This is from our friend Alex Rubenstein. It says dictators don't belong at the Olympics. Just crossing out the faces. And they're all the enemies of, well, excluding Sisi, they're all the enemies of the U.S. empire. So Maduro, they even have Erdogan, Mohammed bin Salman.
Bin Salman's not really an enemy of the U.S. empire, but there's like elements in intelligence that see him as kind of like an erratic Saddam-like figure who's too big for his britches.
They have, Rouhani, who was the elected president of Iran, but they don't care about that. Like, is that Diaz-Canel? It's a weird photo of him, of Cuba. Like
putting him on a stadium and shooting him.
Dictators use the Olympics to legitimize their regimes.
There's Hitler. We couldn't do this without Hitler.
And then they immediately cut to Russia, to Putin's Russia. They go from Hitler to Russia invaded Crimea literally one day. And it's all this millennial influence now, where everyone uses the word literally every other sentence.
Yeah.
And it's all like the Helvetica big caps font. Like, this is made by a millennial. Like, would they ban Angela Merkel, who served more time in office than Putin? Like, absurd. Hell, Michigan, ha ha ha. Absurd.
Well, and it's obviously marketed to like fun, progressive millennials and Zoomers, more like Zoomers, to indoctrinate them with neoconservative regime change fever.
And here at the end, you can see it's co-sponsored by the Lantos Foundation and then the fake Human Rights Foundation.
And these are the two foundations that are behind the two biggest defector frauds on the planet, Yeonmi Park and Naira. So they know that they know they're fake. They know they're lying. But the media doesn't, like, we're like the tanky media that exposes this. I mean, it's just why, if the New York Times was exposing all of this and just naked fabulism, then we wouldn't really have a reason to exist. So here we are. I mean, I think I had other stuff, like I had Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who's not really a defector per se. She's sort of like a defector from Islam, and she was used by the Islamophobia industry to ramp up a lot of war on terror, anti-Muslim fever domestically. She basically fabricated her life story, which is the essence of her memoirs. But I don't know if we should probably wrap.
Well, no, but I mean, she's an important figure. She's become like this fake public intellectual. She's a hardcore neoconservative. She's like now working with all these right-wing think tanks. And she's married to Neil Ferguson, who is a major Harvard historian, a conservative Harvard historian, who his entire life, he's British, his entire life career is dedicated to rehabilitating the British Empire. Literally, like, he writes books about how the British Empire was good, and he's a major historian at Harvard. And she and he are like this power couple, like this ultra white, right-wing, pro-war, pro-imperialist power couple. She used to be bigger, but she's still a big deal.
Well, she came over to the US from the Netherlands claiming that, she was going to be killed by Muslims. And
she was a politician in the Netherlands.
She was a politician. Basically, she had just been discredited in her own party, and she had been exposed in a documentary by like the Dutch version of 60 Minutes for making up her life story, which formed the heart of her book, Infidel. That was like a massively best-selling book, and it was getting all these liberal women into the whole anti-Muslim mindset that was necessary to sustain the war on terror. And when she came to the US, she got a fellowship at the American Enterprise Institute, this neocon think tank in Washington that housed all the Iraq war criminals, Wolfowitz and Feith and company. Of course, she gets the AEI fellowship. And she's married to Niall Ferguson, the open colonialist you mentioned. So I exposed her history in the Netherlands. It was only known to Dutch-speaking audiences in Alternet, which, isn't the biggest publication. It wasn't huge. And it started with me writing Ayaan Hirsi Ali's foundation and asking her questions about it. Then they went to the Neocon Free Beacon, this outlet, to attack me pre-publication and try to like scare me off. And Niall Ferguson went crazy. I'm pretty sure he paid a student from Brandeis University to write 4 attacks on me in 3 different conservative publications, calling me an anti-Semite, attacking me for this piece, but they never disproved it. And obviously, me writing this was a huge threat to her credibility, but it was all true. I'll just read from it really quickly.
I can play the clip here really quickly.
We'll play the clip, but let me just preface it. So Ayaan Hirsi Ali was born Ayaan Hirsi Magam. She immigrated to the Netherlands in 1992, changed her name to Hirsi Ali, and lied to Dutch authorities about her past. Contrary to the story she told the government, she arrived in the Netherlands not from war-torn Somalia, but from Kenya, where she lived in a secure environment and under the protection of the United Nations, which funded her education at a well-regarded Muslim girls' school. She told authorities in the Dutch public that she had fled from civil war in Somalia. She left that country before its war broke out. So another lie. She didn't live through a war there or anywhere else. Thanks to her fabrications, though, Hirsi Ali received political asylum in just 5 weeks. So she got asylum based on a series of lies. She told audiences on Dutch talk shows that her supposedly devout family forced her to marry a draconian Muslim man, that she had not been present at her own wedding, and that her family had threatened to kill her for offending their religious honor. However, this Dutch news, the Dutch 60 Minutes, Zembla told a drastically different story. Hirsi Ali's brother, aunt, and former husband each testified that she was in fact present at her own wedding, that her mother had sent her brother to a Christian school, which was not exactly an indication of Islamic fanaticism. So her family were not actually Muslim fanatics. She just made that whole thing up. She lied about her own family to get fame, which is just disgusting. Yeah, and then she admits in this interview that we'll see here that she made up the whole thing, and that all of the claims of honor-killing threats to get her to marry her husband were empty, that she was in touch with her family all along after the wedding. And her husband even came to visit her in a Dutch refugee camp where she lived after leaving him. So the whole thing, that her whole book is just a fraud. But you can play this clip.
Here's the clip.
Ze was op het huwelijk aanwezig. En we hebben na het huwelijk als man en vrouw nog een week in Nairobi
Afterwards, she
doorgebracht.
spent a week in Nairobi.
Daarna ben ik alleen
Then I
teruggegaan naar
returned to
Canada.
Canada by myself.
Uw ex-man
Your
zegt
ex-husband
ook van, ze
says
was er, want
she
ik
was
ga er niet
there.
trouwen met een vrouw die niet
I
wil,
wouldn't have married
zei
her.
hij tegen mij.
Ik was daar niet geweest. Sterk, ik weet ook waar ik geweest ben.
She says I wasn't there.
Het is toch heel gek dan, dat ik van
It's not that
mensen,
three
van
people
zeker
tell me
3
that you
mensen
were
nu
present.
hoor,
Ja.
dat u er wel bij bent geweest. En
Ja.
u ontkent dat u erbij bent geweest.
Ja, en ik plaats dat nog in de eer schaamtegevoel. Het zijn 3 mensen die graag
Just
de boodschap
totally
verkopen dat we liberaal zijn en dat
sociopathic.
we mensen niet dwingen tot huwelijk.
Hirsi Ali houdt vol dat ze uitgehuwelijkd is. Dan...
If I'm not mistaken, later on in this documentary, she admits that she made it all up, right?
Yeah, her quote is, I made up the whole thing. I said my name was Ayaan Hirsi Ali instead of Ayaan Hirsi Magan. I also said I was born in 1967 while I was actually born in 1969. And then she, right there, you can see she kind of admits that she was present at her own wedding, but she tries to attack her family, and it's all pretty clear.
Yeah,
and
well, and then
now she's whatever. She's famous now. I mean, she's just like a major figure in right-wing media.
yeah, and finally, there's another person you have on the list here who we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, which is one of like the newest and even more cynical than the others. Probably the most disgusting example, which is this: how they're weaponizing little children in conflict zones. And Bana Al-Awad, who was
Bana Al-Abed, as U.S. people would call her,
one of the most disgusting, cynical campaigns. Totally absurd.
Yeah, she was a 6-year-old girl who was basically coached the same way Naira was, and she was in Aleppo. Her mother was learning English, so her mother would tell her to say English things like "save the children of Syria" on camera. Then it was turned into a viral epidemic of regime change pleas from this girl. She was taken out of Aleppo after all of the Salafi jihadi armed gangs were taken out on the green buses to Idlib, which was controlled by Al-Qaeda, and then taken into the arms, literally the arms of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the president of Turkey. And that's to Erdogan's left, or his right, is Lindsay Lohan. I don't know if you can play any of the video of Lindsay Lohan and Bana, but it's unbelievable. Like, Lohan is there faking an Arabic accent. She's just obviously completely bonkers. And then Bana, the little girl who was used as this regime change op, becomes like a Turkish kind of war trophy. She does cell phone commercials in Turkey. And then
Here, I'm going to play. This is incredible. I'm going to show this. This is a commercial that Bana Al-Awad appears in for a Turkish company. Here we go. This is 2018.
क्या bana malum Suriye harp şiddet
And she's like trying to learn Turkish.
maile mecburan ve acilen firar.
All she does is just like say.
I'm trying to find the redacted tonight. Oh, here we go. This is unbelievable. The John F. O'Donnell.
Yeah, send it to me and I'll put it on the screen.
He took down this op in the funniest way I've ever seen anything taken down.
Oh man.
And
all right, so here's John F. O'Donnell on Redacted Tonight. Should I play it?
Yeah.
Fair to say that CNN has been having a rough go of it lately. But don't worry, they've redeemed themselves by revealing a truth bomb of a story that exposes the single clearest example ever of the mass media collaborating with the oligarchy against the interests of the American people. Wow, good job, CNN. Oh, wait, they're the ones doing it.
What is your message to President Assad?
I am very sad. A lot of died and no one helped them. The world is watching. The world doesn't do anything.
Now that adorable girl is Bana Alibet. She's 8 years old.
I just want to point out really quickly before continuing that she was also very clearly coached, and she would be taught certain phrases in English, but this is like a little yeah, this is a little Syrian girl who couldn't speak English. And there are a few video clips that I can find where she was asked a question in an interview that was like off script, and she starts responding with like one of the answers, like canned answers that she was taught to say, and it has nothing to do with the question. And then the interviewer is like, "Oh crap!"
She was on TRT, the Turkish state media channel, and they asked her, "What is your favorite food?" And then she goes, "Yes." And then her mother whispers in her ear and she goes, "Fish." So she doesn't know English. Okay, go back to JFOD.
All right, here. It's so cynical, but it is funny.
7 at the time of that interview, and a Syrian refugee living in Turkey. She's gotten widespread coverage by Western mainstream media because of her viral tweets from war-torn Aleppo. The only problem is, she's fake, man! And I don't mean like she's actually a 48-year-old truck driver or she's being played by prolific method actor Daniel Day-Lewis,
Although, by the way, if people remember Gay Girl from Damascus, there was this whole thing at the beginning of the Syria war where there was this guy, where was he, in France?
His name was Tom McMaster. He was at Sterling University,
in the US,
same university as like internet psycho troll and neocon enforcer Idris Ahmad is at, and he was impersonating a Syrian lesbian who was being hunted by state security because they were it was an obvious op to garner support from progressive and LGBT circles for a regime change operation that would have put one of the most anti-gay forces in the world in power. So it was exposed by Ali Abunimah and Ben Doherty at Electronic Intifada, but like I didn't really understand the subtext of it at the time. Now it's clear. But let's
keep rolling. So John F. O'Donnell jokes about how it wasn't like a middle-aged guy, but there actually were cases of middle-aged guys doing that.
8-year-old truck driver, or she's being played by prolific method actor Daniel Day-Lewis, although he could pull it off.
Yeah.
I agree she's a 7-year-old girl, but she's clearly reading words she doesn't understand, syllable by syllable, from a script to push regime change, man. I really need to stop adding man to the end of sentences when talking about media psyops. It's not really helping.
I want
She's reading.
the children of Syria play and go to school, live in peace.
And her mom is also reading the script too, and like nodding, like, yes, you're reading the script correctly. Look at her mom.
Play and go to school,
It's like almost mouthing the words with her.
live in peace. We can Together, we can help them.
Together we can help them. And trust me, I take no pleasure in making fun of a little girl's struggle to read. Well, maybe a little bit. I am a monster. But this is crazy. She's been exploited by large entities she can't possibly understand. Oh, God. The same thing happened to me in those how-to hairstyling videos.
Today we're going to talk about short, funky styles for men.
These are real
Mama
videos,
loves
by
her
the
style
way.
and wax. Warm it up in the palm of my hands and just distribute it throughout the hair. So now, here's time for the funky.
I needed the $50, okay? I didn't know that lady was gonna manhandle my head like I was a sock puppet. Anyway, if you're not yet convinced that this is a rotten psyop, or at least that she's being used for those purposes, there's a lot more proof. Here's Bana on Turkish TV.
Do you like the food in Istanbul?
Here we go.
Yes.
What do you like?
Safe.
Yeah. What do you like Istanbul?
Fish.
Fish. She's not comprehending basic English, which makes the geopolitical sophistication of some of her tweets, which are managed by her mom, but supposedly said by her, ridiculous. Dear world, it's better to start Third World War instead of letting Russia and Assad like Holocaust Aleppo.
Obviously, a 7-year-old girl is saying that.
A 7-year-old girl wants to start a third world war.
So
that tweet was deleted, but luckily archived to show how apparently bloodthirsty this child is. I guess little Bana's hobbies include coloring, catching butterflies, and nudging world affairs towards the brink of human destruction. At worst, she's a top-to-bottom creation of the propaganda machine pushing for more U.S. intervention in Syria. At best, she's a confused little girl being used by the propaganda machine pushing for more U.S. intervention in Syria. That's the best-case scenario. Who could support this? CNN's Jake Tapper. For more on Syria, follow @AlabedBana. He also deleted it soon after, but not before getting a reply by somebody with a Walter from the Big Lebowski avatar who said, "Are you serious? Resign from journalism. You're out of your element, Donnie." I mean, Jake Tapper. Look at Jake exploit Bana to try and throw Tulsi Gabbard off her game.
Earlier today, she tweeted a message to President Trump, quote, "I beg you, can you do something for the children of Syria? If you can, I will be your best friend. Thank you." Joining me now in a CNN exclusive is Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii. She just returned from a secret trip to Syria.
I'll tell you what I heard from the Syrian people. They expressed a question. They said, why is it that the United States, its allies and other countries are providing support, are providing arms to terrorist groups like al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, Arar al-Sham, ISIS?
That's a good fucking question.
Yeah.
Another good question is, why did Bana Alabed get a book deal from Simon & Schuster? That's real. And why did...
By the way, quick note on that, because as Max pointed out, this is absolutely incredible. This should have been like a massive scandal. She got that book deal because of J.K. Rowling, another just like neoliberal British,
one of the
party supporter,
principal enemies of Jeremy Corbyn,
and who strongly now supports Keir Starmer. And so here we go. This is, as Max pointed out, from back in 2017. So J.K. Rowling's literary agent was Simon & Schuster. And here you can see the Blair partnership. So Tony Blair helped with this. And there's J.K. Rowling and Bana, the same agent. And Bana tweeted at her, "Hi, J.K. Rowling. I watched Harry Potter movie. Bana would like to read the book." Fatima, that's her mom, apparently. #Aleppo. And then here's Syrian refugee girl Bana announces book deal with Simon & Schuster. But wait, there's more. Check this out. So after she tweeted that, I was looking through all of her tweets. After Bana tweeted at J.K. Rowling, J.K. Rowling responded publicly on Twitter in 2016 She said, I hope you do read the book because I think you'd like it. Sending you lots of love. And then they continued talking. And there was this thread here. And J.K. Rowling said, I would love to send Bana a book if I could. And then this guy, Neil Blair. Oh, sorry. Actually, I take it back. It wasn't Tony Blair. It was a different Blair. Neil Blair, who is her literary agent. He said, Bana, I work for J.K. Rowling. Would you be able to read an ebook? I'd be happy to get you a copy. Brilliant. And they talk. So that's how they got in touch with her literary agent, Neil Blair. And he clearly had the idea. This guy, Neil Blair, is the founding partner of the Blair Partnership, representing J.K. Rowling. And he clearly got the idea with her to represent Bana. So, I mean, it's so cynical. And J.K. Rowling is the one who referred to Corbynista Stalinist Muppets is the term she used.
Yeah. I think she might be the first author to become a billionaire, which colors her perspective. But that is probably I would say out of everything, the Bana op was the craziest one.
And it gets even crazier. Check this out. So this is it wasn't just, I mean, she did tweet the Holocaust Aleppo Third World War thing, but look at these other tweets. They're obviously a 7-year-old Syrian girl who can't speak English is writing this. Putin and Bashar al-Assad bombed my school, killed my friends, and robbed my childhood. It's time to punish the killers of children in Syria. I am a Syrian child who suffered under Bashar al-Assad and Putin, she adds. I welcome Donald Trump action against the killers of my people. She's saying that when Trump bombed Syria, she's saying that I welcome
He endorsed
Trump
the bombing of Syria, yeah.
And saying it's time to punish the killers. And then she added, dear world, this very beautiful babies died in the chemical attack. And there's a photo of this fake chemical attack. And she said, dear Turkish Airlines, please give me your planes to evacuate the kids.
Yeah, I mean, it really feels like someone who speaks English is writing the tweets and making them sound like they're in non-native English just to make them more plausible.
And then finally, the cherry on top of this disgusting, cynical psyop is her tweeting in 2017, I am a Turkey citizen now. And it's her with Erdogan receiving her citizenship.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, the world's leading humanitarian, Erdogan, receives her with Lindsay Lohan, another abused, exploited child actor.
Yeah,
I mean, how does Erdogan get like two of the most exploited child actors at his side?
Yeah.
We got to play before we go. I mean, I'm kind of like lightheaded. I feel like I've been like on hunger strike or something after watching all this and like all the imagery of rats eating the eyes out of people wearing flowered pants, pantsless men or begging for food with their intestines hanging out with flies on it, while children chase rats eating dead bodies of people who can't go into trains that are being pushed by people who can't send letters or write on phones. I'm starting to hallucinate a little bit, but I really feel like we have to play the Lindsay Lohan video with Erdogan because it's just so next level insane.
All right, I'm gonna find this. I mean, when she started using that fake accent, it was so weird. Can you send me the link?
Your old Syria.
I think
Yeah,
I found it
I'm
here.
looking for it. Here it is. This is
Oh
amazing.
no, it's not it.
Okay,
You gotta
I'm
send me
gonna-
the
yeah,
video
it's
clip.
coming right now.
All right, well here
it is.
Did you send it to me?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Oh, okay, here we go. Oh my god, this video is so weird. This is so weird.
I mean, there's so many levels of weird.
Here we go.
And to all of the people in Syria and Aleppo suffering, and all of the refugees that we are here supporting you, and you can hang on and be strong, just like Bana has. And we're sending you lots of love and light and blessings. I love you too.
So weird. There's actually other videos. I mean, that's the video of her with Bana, but I have to play this really quickly. There are other videos of her speaking with this weird accent Let me play this here. It's so bizarre. This is kind of irrelevant, but it's just so weird. Here we go. Here's Lindsay Lohan.
Me holding it with me, walking, going. Whereas the paparazzi maybe across the street, I didn't know. And they crucified me for it in America. They made me feel like it's
reference.
What? What?
And they crucified me for it. It's like when you meet like upper class Arabs in London, like upper class like Saudi diplomats in London. They talk like that.
Or it's like Americans who move to Britain and really want to stop. They want to stop being American and pretend like they're British. So they like adopt this kind of like weird fake British accent.
No. She actually was hanging out with Saudis in London, and there are rumors that she converted to Islam under the guidance of really wealthy Khaliji people. There's another video I sent you of her talking about like an attempted kidnapping that's pretty out of control.
Oh man. Well, like you said, I mean, the moral here, I'm getting this up, but the moral of the story here is that like they're both abused child actors.
What do you need?
Here we go.
Do you want to stay in a hotel tonight? Yeah.
She's trying to take a child from its mother,
Husband.
and she has that weird accent.
You should not have them on the floor. You're a hardworking woman.
She's like trying to kidnap this
woman's just let it play.
Child.
And you should be doing what you do for your children so they have a better life. No, this is dirty. Leave it. No. I will get you new. I'll get you new.
I will get you new.
It's what? No, we got guys. No, yet.
So, yeah, she's trying to get like
guys,
a kid
you're going the wrong way.
She also just said halas.
Yeah, and like with Bana, she's like, oh, mashallah. So yeah, it all goes back to Lindsay Lohan in the end.
No, but really, I mean, on a serious note, they're both abused child actors, and it shows the cynicism of these just imperialist hacks who are willing to exploit these children and do mental damage to them, like what happened to Lindsay Lohan. It's so sick.
Yeah. So I mean, we could actually go on for another 2 hours, but I'm gonna pass out. So I mean, this is maybe the most fun I've had with my clothes on during a podcast with Ben Norton. And we'll clip a lot of this out for YouTube, since I think we can get away with it. We'll clip some of it out. But really, I mean, the lies need to be exposed beyond all the fun, just the sheer hilarity of it. The lies need to be exposed because people believe it. People believe it, and the lies are being deployed to generate war and cause mass death.
Couldn't put it any better. And also, just a lot of these people are they're actual grifters, like Park, who are making money on this. And people need to know that, like, Yeonmi Park has been making herself rich by just lying about her home country and trying to call for war. It's so, I mean, that's like the worst form of treachery you can imagine.
And the ultimate form of celebrity in the US. So, until episode 6, this was Foreign Agents. Thanks a lot, Ben, for joining me and helping me tee up all these videos. And for another really successful live stream. Thanks, everyone. The chat was another excellent chat. So thanks for joining me. And look for another great guest next week. Peace.